As the EU realizes that, its own future is in jeopardy. Yet, in Montenegro, a Chinese loan to build part of a highway from the port of Bar to Belgrade has sent your country's debt soaring, and it's forced the government to raise taxes, partially freeze public sector wages, and end benefit to mothers, which resulted in some protests. And your courts recently sentenced 2 Russian nationals for plotting a coup against you. So, is there really a plan B for Montenegro, besides the EU?
There is no plan B. Montenegro has paved its path of European Euro-Atlantic integration. We have become members of NATO, and we are much advanced in comparison to other aspiring countries when it comes to the path towards European Union. All of these things that you said are true. I warned clearly that the Balkans should be or has to be the zone of primary responsibility of Euro and Euro-Atlantic community, because we are geographically part of Europe and because we are a part of Euro-Atlantic system of values. I don't think anybody else should be convinced into that. Now everybody is aware of that. And I said that there are new players in the geopolitical scene and that we have to open our eyes and accept that the first stage of the geopolitical infrastructure has been finished, and it happened when the Berlin Wall collapsed, and now we have the end of the second stage where we had one superforce, and now we are starting the third stage, and if we do not open our eyes wide, we will be very surprised, unpleasantly. Russia, China and the others are seeking their place and their position in the Balkans. And how much of that they will get depends on how much European Union and NATO will give them. And that's why I would like to invite European Union and NATO to do their job in our region. Stop repeating only that the door is open. Because if we wanted to accept that kind of invitation, we would have already been in. But we don't go to the doors usually from our region, but we go with our heads through the wall, and we pay very high price. We lag behind Europe in terms of the living standard. Today, we need a clear policy of incentives for the Western Balkans to go through the door which is open. And the second question, it is true that we took the loan to build the highway. I could give you more details, but I don't have enough time. But we didn't have any room to choose any other offer, because the offer that we got from the Chinese partners was so much more favorable, we couldn't do anything else. But that is a part of what I described earlier. Why weren't we offered such solutions, such bid from European Investment Bank or EBRD? Why didn't we get such favorable conditions from them? Why did we get it from Chinese partners? Because China is taking the space, taking the room that Europe leaves empty. And the third thing, when it comes to public debt, we are still below 70%. It is above 60%. Defined in the Maastricht Agreement, but since it is below 70% of the GDP, it means that it is below of the public debt of 2/3 of the countries from European Union. So we shouldn't be emphasizing this for the European Union. And it is true that recently we have the first instance judgment in the court proceedings related to the attempted violent coup in Montenegro in October 2016. The idea was to stop our progress towards NATO membership. Some people whose IDs show that they are members of certain state structures in Russia were involved, and we did not make any judgment about whether Russia as the state is directly involved or not, because we do not have clear evidence for the court proceedings, and we don't need that. We have evidence, clear evidence that these people with those IDs participated in that plot, and it's logical that they are convicted.
Continue a bit in the same vein. I was paging through the recent progress report for Serbia, written by that came out from the EU, which says that Serbia needs to progressively align its foreign and security policy with the EU's common foreign and security policy in the period up to accession. And then I saw yesterday, 2 days ago, in the news, the official announcement that Belgrade is planning to sign in October the free trade agreement with the Eurasian Economic Union. So I would like to ask you, I know we have two of the the tallest presidents in Europe, probably sitting on the stage, but for how long will you be able to stand on two tables, swing from two branches, play two pianos? I don't know which, there's been so many of these metaphors going on for the last few years. So is this a sign that you're worried about the European project, that it will collapse, or that Serbia may eventually not make it?
No. No, I know that you don't like me to speak too much, and I'll take care of your interests, which means that Serbia has been negotiating that trade agreement with Eurasian Alliance for 10, 12 years, and now we're gonna get a very important license to export our cheese to Russia and to Belarus, which is very important for us, and I'm proud to confirm that. On the other hand, we are on our EU path, and it has nothing in common. We are not going to be a part of Eurasian Association. We are going to be a part of EU if someone would like to see us within EU in the future, and that's it. We have good relationship with Russia, we have good relationship with China. Taking a lot of loans from China and from EIB, EBRD and all the others, we also succeeded to cut our public debt from 78% of GDP ratio to 50%. We cut an unemployment rate from 26% to 11.7%. We have a surplus in our budget for the 4th year in a row, which has been the case in only 3 EU member states. I'm not saying that we are living in a paradise, we are still a very poor country, but we are doing better and better, and we'll do everything that we can to improve living standard of our people. And if you ask me whether we're gonna conclude more arrangements either with Russia, either with China, for the sake of our people, yes, we're gonna do it. And no one can stop us in that. Are we going to say before Russian president that our strategic goal is to be a part of European Union and to fulfill European integration process demands? Yes, I will always do it, and will always say that face to face to Vladimir Putin. And to mention it once again, as many of EU leaders don't do when they meet him. They do it when they leave Moscow or when Putin leave their capitals, but they don't do it tete-a-tete.
Thanks. Nice to have a window into your private chats with Mr. Putin. Your Excellency,
yes, I met him so far 15 times, and I'm planning 16, sorry, and I'm planning to meet him very soon again, and I'll inform you about it.
Oh, great. I look forward to the message. Your Excellency, Ms. Zaharjeva, last year in Sofia, Bulgaria hosted the first EU-Balkan summit since the 2003 Thessaloniki summit, where the EU promised a clear accession perspective for the Western Balkans countries. What else is Bulgaria specifically doing to help the countries in the region? And what can they learn from your recent accession experience?
Thank you. First of all, I really appreciate always the possibility to talk about the Balkans, Western Balkans, not only because they are our neighbors, but I think that we share on the Balkans, and the previous panel shows how complicated is everything on the Balkans, but we share common history, we share common values, we are friends, neighbors, and Bulgaria it's among the member states, European member states, which really, without any hidden agenda, want to see all 6 Western Balkans countries in, I would say, a near future or a medium-term future, became a part of European family. And it was first presidency of Bulgaria in the beginning of 2018. And one of our main priority was European perspective and connectivity of the Western Balkans countries. And it's not the policy that Bulgaria will continue only 6 months. It's our long strategic goal. And I thank the 2 presidents who are here for receiving me before the presidency, give me opportunity to listen what they think that Europe should do to confirm the European perspective of the Western Balkans countries. Because it's two-side process, it's not one-side play. So European Union should, I think, not organize once per 15 years and meet the leaders of the Balkans with all the European leaders, but consistently support European integration of the Western Balkans. It's a process. It's a difficult one. You mentioned our integration process. It was painful. The reforms sometimes are painful, but trust me, all the reforms that we implement before accession were for good. So we continue after our presidency to be one of the most strongest supporters. We organize meetings, forums, delivering expertise to our friends on the Western Balkans, and of course continue to convince more enlargement skeptical European member states that it's a win-win process. And as the president mentioned, they are in Europe. Actually, some of them are closer to Bulgaria to some of the most enlargement skeptical countries. And they are not somewhere far away. And I fully believe that European projects will be not complete without European Western Balkans became a member state.
Thank you very much. Ms. Brego, the RCC really focuses a lot on regional connectivity, regional relations, and for years this has also been a very important strategic priority of the EU, but there remain so many barriers to the free movement of people and goods. You know, together in the region, the countries have more than 17 million inhabitants, a market the size of the Netherlands, but their economies generate only about the same as much as Slovakia, which has a population a third of the size. So what are some of the most important barriers to regional connectivity, both tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers, and what are the trends? For instance, in Trieste in 2017, there was a big summit during which there was announced there would be a regional youth cooperation council that's set up in Tirana, but yesterday or 2 days ago, some of my friends sent me a message that it's clinically dead, and they're saying that actually the regional cooperation trend is not improving. So what's your perspective on that?
Well, I wouldn't really dare to say that the regional cooperation is not moving ahead. Otherwise, so I'm not going to have a job, and I think that no one's role is to be seated here if that one is going to be true. Well, but let me start not informally to thank the Globsec organizers for offering this chance to one of the most challenging agendas of the region. So I think for all of us to succeed in a near future on our Europeanization or transformation of the region, the regional cooperation is one of the utmost reforms and agendas to be alive and kicking. When I started my tenure in office, I traveled everywhere in the region, and I met President Vučić, I met President Đukanović, and everybody else out of the six. And frankly, we could be hell-bent as an organization to promote and facilitate regional cooperation. But our success is definitely the success of the economies of the region. So, said it differently, we can't do anything if rancor, bitterness, conflict, and if negotiations would be tooth and claw. But definitely the situation is different today in the region. You mentioned Trieste, then we had the Sofia summit. Well, I do hope that it's not going to take as long as it took from 1999 when the stabilization association process was introduced to the region, because I think that now we need to step up. And I have to commit myself, and I'll pull no punches on that. I think that we need to move now for both of us, be it Western Balkans and European Union as well, from the geopolitics of nice speeches and approaches to the real geopolitics. Unless Western Balkans will join European Union will never be considered full. We are not only joined together by geography or history, even that history in the Balkans have been quite different in the last 20 years, but we are jointly moving together, and we have to as partners. And I do trust and believe that if there is something concrete that might happen in the region, is the transformation and reconciliation through the economic development. And on that one, definitely, we have some good figures to show. But, you know, in Balkans is always colorful, so there are a lot of paradoxes living alive in there. So while there are more than 700,000 people employed during the last 5 years, and while there is an increase in trade with exports with EU in the last 10 years, 146%, we can't really give nice figures about the intra-trade among ourselves. But on the other hand, there are some nice figures in the region. So if you'll go and read and then check the public opinion and that of the business, you'll feel that there are a lot of paradoxes. But still, business community are quite positive about the development of the region. 61% of them, they do have trust that the economic situation is on the right way. If you ask the citizens of the Balkans, their perception is more gloomy than that of the business community. But then it speaks a lot on the need for the regional cooperation. One figure, for the very first time after 4 years, the citizens of the Western Balkans, 56% of them think that European perspective is something that will work for good in changing their lives. But 74% of them, they are trustful that regional cooperation is going to do it faster and better.
Excellent. Wow. Well, after those statistics, maybe we should check our recently generated ones via the poll. I'm actually quite curious to see, and then we will go to some Slido questions. Okay. Okay. I'm not really sure how we should interpret these statistics, but I will leave it to the presidents. But I will go first to my, yes, here we go. We have a couple of great questions, and I think maybe we should ask Milena Lazarevic. For the presidents, if full EU accession is impossible to achieve midterm due to opposition within the EU, would you accept a partial or reduced membership as a start? Who wants to take that first?
Milo, to je za tebe.
As the front runner, nominal front, you should maybe take it first, Mr. President Đukanović.
Sa zadovoljstvom.
With pleasure. Well, I think that we should continue with consistent implementation of the strategy of unification of Europe. I think that without any doubt, we should make credible that all the countries of the Western Balkans have their prospects in the European Union, in the long run at least. Everything else would be a policy that is not good. I don't think that we should create any shortcuts for anybody to become a member of the European Union without meeting the standards and doing the reforms before that. But I would like to warn that the European Union has to take into account the the reform process and geopolitical aspects and adoption of standards. These are all the facets of this issue. So I don't expect anybody to say you will be a member at certain time, but I expect even less them to tell us you wouldn't be members in the following 5 years, or enlargement is not on the agenda because we have to deal with the consolidation. That is wrong. That is the invitation for everyone who would like to take the Western Balkans on the wrong path and ensuring that the Balkans just actually lose time and tries to deal with certain alternative perspectives, and I don't see any alternative for us. I see that there are penetrations of interests of third parties in the Western Balkans, and that's the attempt of the destruction of European prospects of the Western Balkans, and that is actually the attempt of trying to destroy European system of values and unified Europe. There is no alternative offer. I do not like monopolies. And I would like to hear alternatives, but there are no alternatives. You can't hear proper alternative. We don't have it. And if European Union does not react, and if European Union does not recognize that it is its own interest to continue enlargement of the Western Balkans immediately, then European Union has to be aware that they are taking the responsibility for letting their priority interest zones to the countries that come with the platforms that are opposite to the system of value of European Union.
Question. And since I know you're a man for facts and figures, I wonder if you would also respond to the poll. I would like to add one more mini question that I think Matt asked, but I don't know if it was fully answered, about as we wait for the decision of the member states on North Macedonia and Albania, how that might affect your speed and insistence to reach a deal with Kosovo. Sorry, that was too many questions, but...
Speaking about North Macedonia and Albania, we would always vote for them in favor of their interests. Full stop. And I was one of the very rare guys that supported Edi Rama at that very tough discussion in Sofia summit, which happened a year ago. And it was not an easy day for Edi Rama and Albania. Would always do the same. It would be good news for them, for their citizens. At least they would get some hope, which is good for them. And what is good for them is always good for us. Speaking about these figures, well, it's not a representative sample. I think that if there would be a representative sample, it would be more % on that never side, and less on that 20-25. Our job is to do things, and for us, as you know, the biggest hurdle is Kosovo, although we need to do many things regarding rule of law in particular, because on the economy side, there were no remarks from European Commission on Serbia, and it was all about rule of law, work of our parliament, and I don't know what else. But the most important and the biggest part of European Commission report, and it's not only that, it's there to say all about it, it's what we're going to do with Kosovo and what we're going to do with Priština regarding our negotiating process. And just to add one word, Mr. Đukanović was speaking about possible alternatives. We don't have an alternative, but I would refer to Melinda's words. I think that we need to stick to each other much stronger than it used to be, that we need to find, that's why I'm always advocating possible arrangement between Belgrade and Priština. Because if we do so as a block of territories or countries or different nations, we can do many things much better than we do it today. And because there is another factor that it's not up to us and it's not dependent on us, and that's a desire of EU countries. There is nothing that Mr. Đukanović or myself that we can do with the wishes of French or German citizens. And I just want to inform you that I'll speak to Angela Merkel tomorrow morning. If I'm going to inform you about my talks with Putin, I'll do the same with my talks with Merkel. And it's up to them. And before that, we need to do something for our citizens. I think that there are a lot of barriers that we should put down, and that's what we're going to do together with North Macedonia. We're going to do one-stop shop at our border, which is very important, and I met Prime Minister Zaev on that issue, spoke to Pendarovski on that issue as well, and I think that we'll put that in place within 2 months, and then we're going to do the same with all the other neighbors, and that is going to be a good step forward. We'll try to do absolutely the same with Milo and with Bosnia. That would be very important for us. That will cut our operational costs. That will do good for our economies. And to tell you the truth, we are ready to do in the future customs union. We would equalize all subsidies and incentives that we provide to possible investors, because that would be the way to create unique market And I know that many people would see that as a sort of substitution for European Union. I don't care how do you see it. I think it's something of the biggest importance for our region. We can stay on our EU path. If you want us, take us. If you don't want us, we should take care of ourselves. And if we create a sort of regional economic zone, a block of countries and territories that will fight for themselves, I think that we can have twice bigger or 3 times bigger growth rates in the future. Last year we had 4.5% growth rate. This year it's going to be, I dare to say today, 3.7, 3.8, and we are not satisfied with that. But it's going to be, as you know, in first 5, 6 countries in an entire Europe, which is not bad, which means that in next 10, 15 years we can get closer to EU living standards. But yes, all of us would like to see our countries as part of EU. That's what is Milo's wish, that's what is my wish, but it's not, there are many things that are up to us, but it's not the case that everything's up to us, and we have to be aware of that, and that's it.
Thank you very much. I'd like to open up to some audience questions. I'm sure that there are a number of people with burning questions. Okay. Let's see where the closest mic is. Perhaps it's close to Milan there, and then I will promise that we will kind of go around the room and come this way. So maybe if there's a mic there, can we get one?
Are you sure, Valerie, you want to start with me? Milan TGAP, Berlin. To 2 presidents, President Đukanović, when I had an honor to host you in Berlin, I asked you the question that you are a president of the country and also a chairman of your party. And there's a congress of your party in the autumn, and I ask you if you will step down as a chairman of the party to be president. I would address the same question to President Vučić, who is also leader of the party. But let me have a tough question for you. I had one for President Tači. Now, we are in a country where journalists were murdered last year, which triggered huge protests in Slovakia. But the murder was investigated, and and those who did it are in prison. Huge protests in your country were initiated by a brutal attack on the opposition politician in November, Borko Stefanović. Some people accused you of instigating violence on the opposition, and the best answer to show that this is not true would be to investigate that attack. Is that attack investigated? And are the perpetrators in prison?
Thank you. We can have the answers first so that we don't get distracted by other questions.
Da, veoma kratko.
Tek 30 godina vlast.
U ovom trenutku
At this moment, unfortunately, I cannot give you a specific answer. That is the topic that we will discuss in our party within the following 6 months in the preparation of the Congress. But I would like to confirm the following. We are aware of the good practice of European democracy. We know that. And we want to adopt that practice as fast as possible in every possible segment of our society that will be beneficial for the further democratic prosperity of Montenegro. Our societies do have certain specific features, and those are specific features that we have to take into account. If it weren't for that, we would probably have less disputable parts of our practice, and we would have less suspicion from Europe. We have to know very well what are the specific features of economic and democratic and cultural development of our region. So in that context, we will consider carefully the question that you asked. Unfortunately, although I would really like to, I can't give you a specific answer to that question.
That's the reason why Milo is in power for 30 years. Smartest possible reaction. Your second question. We almost immediately arrested those guys, detained those guys, and there is an ongoing trial. And it happened a year ago. And I was lectured by thousands of people that in Serbia would be the first country in which some journalists would be killed or wounded. And after that, in let's say at least 6 EU countries that happened, and some non-EU countries that happened, but nothing similar happened in Serbia. Anyway, we always punish all those guys that are using violent methods, and will carry on with that. Speaking about number of people that were protesting, I need to tell you that I'm very satisfied about the tone of the protests. Even though from time to time those protests turned violent, we haven't arrested almost none of them, unlike it happens in many other European countries. They are free to gather, free to rally, free to express their will, and I'm very proud of that. And speaking about their influence on Serbian public audience, although my numbers and numbers of my party have recently dropped because of that Kosovo discussion in the parliament, and I was seen as a traitor in a way of Serbian national interests, still we have, let's say, 4 to 4.5 times more votes than the others. And it shows that Serbian people are determined to listen and to the real things and to accept the reality, not the dreams of some people. But I do share your worries, and I hope that in all the other countries would be done everything in the same manner that was done regarding that issue in our country. And
Thank you.
Of course we need to do many other things to improve an environment for free journalism and freedom of expression and many other things, and I'm not running away from that issue. We'll have to tackle it in a most serious way. And speaking about that question that you... Okay.
I'm sure you would like to answer maybe another round of questions where we have only 4 minutes left, probably less, so I hate to interrupt you, but I also do not want to have the audience upset with me for not having a chance to answer questions. So we had a question over here, just one more. This is the last one.
Valerie, everybody's amazed with your energy.
Matthew Rhodes, George C. Marshall Center. The populations of Southeast Europe are forecast to decline by 20% or more by the middle of this century. What does that trend mean for your countries, and what can your governments or the RCC do to address it?
It's the most difficult issue for all of us, and it is really happening and harming all of us. And you wouldn't believe it that it's even worse in some EU countries from our region, including Croatia and Bulgaria. And it's not easy to tackle that issue. We are doing some measures, but before everything we need to improve our economies, living standards of our people, then to offer something else for that is not easy to find, but European perspective is one of the key solutions for our countries. That's what I can say in a very brief way.
Također, kratak komentar.
Just a brief comment. Reputation of our region is very clear and very famous. We are in an unstable region, and that permanent instability comes from the lack of tolerance towards diversity that exists in the region. And my belief, my deep belief, is that the inspiration to the intolerance and instability comes from our lagging behind in terms of economic development. So if we want to deal with the roots of the problem, we have to start from the economic development. That's why it is important that Alexander said that we have to keep the European prospects very clear. And the second thing is, it is not important when we will become members of the European Union, but it is the most important to use in a smart manner the time before we become members. And this time should be used by European Union and us. And we will do the best if we connect us through infrastructure with Europe. And in that way, we will actually answer the question of China and Russia and the others. But we will also make the European prospects for the region very clear in such a way through infrastructural connections. And the second thing is we have to improve knowledge. That is one of the key deficits, key challenge that we have in our region. But if we are smart, and if we do the policy of Europeanization and we work on these issues in a smart way, I'm sure that the region will overcome its basic weakness, and that in this way we will clearly make the European prospects clear and foreseeable for all the citizens in the region.
The ire of the audience by saying the only thing we have time left for is for 2 more closing statements from the ladies on the panel. It's a rare panel in my patch of the world that I cover that is a 50-50 gender balance, but it doesn't matter if we don't let you speak. So please, Ms. Zaharieva, briefly, if you